Welcome back into the channel, everybody, man. It feels like we are deep into the NFL offseason despite the Super Bowl just being about 2 weeks ago now at this point. But today we're going to be taking a look at some draft prospects, diving into Daniel Jeremiah's top 50 draft prospect list. 2.0 of this list. So without further ado, let's talk some prospects. All right, so I'm not sure exactly how Daniel Jeremiah does this. I tried to do a little bit of research, couldn't figure it out. Let me know in the comment section if you know if he incorporates positional value. I don't think that he does, though. I think that these are just his raw prospect grades. Number one, he has the Indiana quarterback Fernando Mendoza. When factoring in position, obviously Mendoza is going to be the number one overall pick to the Raiders. I do think that Mendoza has become quite an interesting prospect in terms of how people view him. There are some people that think, yeah, he's going to be a bust. Maybe he'll be a fringe top 16 quarterback. And there's other people that think Mendoza could be the future of the NFL, a future Super Bowl champion. Myself, I kind of land on Mendoza's ceiling being somewhere from the 7th to 10th best quarterback in football. I think a comp of Andrew Luck is kind of fair at this point in time in terms of where he is athletically. Like, he obviously has some mobility to his game, but he wants to be in the pocket. He wants to run the ball, or excuse me, he wants to throw the ball. But when he does run the ball, there is some power to his game. Obviously, we all saw the run in the national championship. Again, like Daniel Jeremiah says here, Mendoza is a very accurate thrower with excellent size, toughness, and enough athleticism. I think that that's the perfect sentence to encapsulate exactly who Mendoza is. Operates well out of the shotgun and is already pretty good in the RPO, which we've seen obviously be used in the NFL. Mendoza is really, really solid. His comp for him is Matt Ryan. I think that that's a fair one. I would kind of merge Matt Ryan with Andrew Luck personally in terms of where I'm viewing Fernando Mendoza. Number two, the Notre Dame running back Jeremiah Love. Love is a dynamic weapon as a runner and receiver. On inside runs, he runs high, narrow, but he explodes to and through the hole, will drop a lower level contact, and has the lower leg drive to bounce off of defenders. Jeremiah Love, the clear number one running back in this draft class, probably the only running back that's going to go in the first round of this draft class, and I think rightfully so. Jeremiah Love is absolutely a game changer. You know, you've been seeing him mocked in the top 10 over and over again, whether that be to the Commanders, the Kansas City Chiefs, the New Orleans Saints. I've seen him fall as far as to the Minnesota Vikings, but if you're a Vikings fan and Jeremiah Love falls in your lap, like, this is a prayer answered. Obviously, if you're the Vikings, right, JJ McCarthy has kind of shown, yeah, this is a quarterback that we need to have a little bit more of a reliable run game than Aaron Jones. So Jeremiah Love would be great there. Love is his number two overall prospect. I don't have a huge problem with it. My number one is Mendoza when you factor in positional value, but my number one player on my big board hasn't been said yet. David Bailey. Wow. David Bailey making a massive leap here. So is he going positional value? Because at bringing an edge at 3, man, I wish I knew. It just didn't say in the pre-written notes. Bailey is an ultra explosive edge rusher with outstanding production. He operated out of both a 2-point and 4-point stance in Texas Tech scheme. His game is all about get off and winning early in the down. He eats ground in a hurry and uses dip rip move before flattening quickly to the passer. David Bailey is really, really good, man, and he is a pure pass rusher out of this draft class. To me, Ruben Bain is still my number one edge in this draft class. I know he's not quite the pure pass rusher that David Bailey is off the edge. You know, if you want to bring in a guy who next season is going to get you 12 plus sacks in his rookie season, that is David Bailey. But in terms of the best edge player in this draft, to me, that is still Ruben Bain with what he could do, especially in the run game. I like my edges to be able to, be solid in both aspects. I don't want to have to take them off the field. Not that I'm necessarily saying Bailey will need to come off the field, but he could, in the NFL, fall into more of a third down specialist, pass rush, bull rusher type of role, which obviously we've seen plenty of guys have success in, but to me, 3 is a little high for David Bailey. Arvell Reese comes in at 4. So again, I'm just a little bit higher on Ruben Bain than Daniel Jeremiah is. Let me know kind of where you view these edges in the comment section. Arvell Reese is a fluid and explosive athlete. Ohio State used him as a chess piece on defense. He aligned off the ball at linebacker, on the edge as a rusher, and occasionally was deployed as a quarterback spy. See, this would be the argument for picking Arvell Reese over a Ruben Bain or over a David Bailey in the NFL draft. If you want to get just an overall super versatile edge piece who can drop into coverage, who can truly be an outside linebacker, or can be an edge rusher, then Arvell Reese is your guy. Sky's the limit. Again, a lot of people are kind of comparing him to Jalon Walker last year, but again, there is question marks about how that level talent gets to the NFL level. James Pierce was better than Jalon Walker this year, and he was more of a pure pass rusher. So maybe some of that train of thought led to Daniel Jeremiah's ranking. Sonny Styles, the linebacker out of Ohio State. We got two Ohio State guys up that aren't my Ohio State guy, which maybe, I think Daniel Jeremiah is crazy here. But I digress. Sonny Styles. Styles is tall, long, and rangy linebacker prospect. I mean, people have been comping him to Fred Warner. You see Daniel Jeremiah does it here. I think Sonny Styles would be the perfect draft pick for the Cincinnati Bengals, a team that doesn't going to invest a lot of resources in their defense. Having a true game-changing linebacker in the middle of a defense that doesn't have a lot of pieces. Same could be said for Washington. I think could be a really, really big move. Styles is a sweet player. Linebacker, the positional value isn't quite what edge is, but I still think having a strong linebacker could be really meaningful. Now we see Ruben Bain, the edge out of Miami. So he has Ruben Bain at 6. On my big board, Bain would fall surely in the top 5. I'm trying to think if he'd be top 3 for me. Probably not, but I think he'd be 4. I think Mendoza would be in my top 3. I think Jeremiah Love would be in my top 3. And then a guy that we haven't even talked about yet, which is getting a little concerning. But like I said, Bain is a thick, square edge rusher with short arms. The arms thing is going to, people are going to kill him for that. To me, I don't envision it being a problem with him. I think he was really solid at Miami. He was the best edge rusher in the country last year, in my estimation, in college football. So to me, I don't view the arm length as a problem. He already showed against high level competition that he has elite get off and he can be an effective pass rusher. And as well, I think he's already polished in the run game. So Bain at 6, a little low for me. Carnell Tate, wow. I can't believe we haven't seen Caleb Downs yet. I'll just say it. Caleb Downs is my number 1 prospect. So we'll talk about that when we get there. Carnell Tate as his wide receiver 1 prospect. I have to do a little bit more deep dive into some of these receivers. It feels like a very 1 ABC to me. Jordan Tyson, I think, has the highest ceiling, but the injury history does worry me. Carnell Tate, he's got really strong size, and his catch ability, his contested catch ability is really strong. We saw that at Ohio State. Obviously Jeremiah Smith is the story there in the wide receiver room, but Julian Sayin was willing to let it rip to Carnell Tate multiple times too, and Tate was able to make plays. And with the wide receivers that Ohio State has been putting out over the last few years with Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, JSN, it's hard to take a look at Carnell Tate and think like this guy's not going to work out. So I don't mind Tate being his wide receiver 1, but having Tate up at 7 feels a little high to me, especially when you haven't mentioned his teammate Caleb Downs, and we're still not going to. He must just really not value safety, I guess. Mansour Delane. Delane is one of the most consistent players in this draft class. He makes everything look easy in coverage as a corner who is extremely loose and fluid in his change of direction. He is adept at press coverage, possessing the ability to reroute and mirror all over the field. Listen, Delane is my corner 1 in this draft class, no doubt about it. I think he's a solid piece. And I do think the way that this draft is shaping up, it's possible that he does fall to kind of the end of, somewhere in the 8 through 13 range. And I think it'd be a really good pick for the teams there. Now we see Caleb Downs talked about. To me, Caleb Downs is my number 1 player in this draft class. And I know that that's going to get some pushback because the guy is a safety and positional value at the safety position is overlooked, etc. But this guy can play safety, linebacker, and nickel. He is the only player in this draft class that I don't see weakness in their game, that I feel like is a lock Pro Bowler, and I do believe we'll be talking about as an all-pro level player one day. For me, viewing the player, regardless of position, as a true blue chip prospect that has top 5 positional upside at his position in the NFL. I don't feel that way about Mendoza. I like Jeremiah Love. Top 5 feels a little juicy. Maybe he could sniff around that range. I don't really feel that way with the edge rushers or the tackles. I feel that way with Caleb Downs. That is why, to me, he's number 1. Maybe the logic's flawed in your mind. You can let me know in the comment section, but Downs at 9 feels really low to me. Makai Lemon, he fell a little bit in this for Jeremiah Love. Lemon is one of my favorite players in this draft. He's a wideout with a running back's body and a linebacker temperament. Listen, like, you're going to see the comps to Amon-Ra because both went to USC. Both are kind of that slot guy. Both were kind of viewed as a little bit undersized potentially for the position. I think Makai Lemon's going to be great. He's going to be a really solid yak receiver. I do think the slot is where he'll be most effective in the NFL, but I don't think that should be held against him. I do think that having an effective slot receiver, obviously with the comp being Amon-Ra, at its ceiling can get you a top 10, maybe top 5-ish level player who is uber consistent year in and year out. And it's also possible that Makai Lemon is more than just a slot wide receiver and gets to the ceilings of a JSN. You know, a couple years ago, people thought JSN, this guy is a slot merchant. That's where he's going to live. And then JSN got some time outside this year and led the NFL in receiving yards. So I like Makai Lemon. I like his work ethic. And I like the fact that you could line him up in the slot. You know, USC lined him up in the backfield a couple times. He can win on 50-50 balls despite, you know, his size. Like, he plays big. So Makai Lemon is cool for me there. I got to learn how to pronounce some of these names. I'm not even going to hold you. Olavavega Ioane. Somebody let me know. Probably butchered it. But listen, he is the best offensive lineman in this draft class, I think. You know, he's going to be a guard, and obviously tackle has a little bit more positional value than guard, but I'm not sure that these tackles are fully tackles at the NFL level either. So getting a really strong guard, I've seen a couple of times this be mocked to the Baltimore Ravens, and what a fall for, you know, what a lucky year to have a down year for them if you're the Baltimore Ravens to bring in a player like this. At 11, I got no problem with this ranking. Francis Muaga, I think that this is a fine ranking for Muaga. I do have him over Fano as well. There are some concerns about, you know, is he an NFL tackle? Is he a strong NFL tackle? But I think he's at least a consistent starter at the NFL tackle position, if that's what you're looking for. I don't know if he's going to be this Pro Bowl, all pro caliber player, but I do think he will be solid for your team at 12. In terms of a big board, I don't have a problem with the ranking. Jermod McCoy at 13. Again, I do have Mansour Delane ahead of McCoy. I know this has been a bit of a conversation, but McCoy had an outstanding 2024 season, but he missed all of last year with an ACL tear. So it's really tough to kind of rank his game. He is at his best in press coverage, more of a man corner specifically. Again, I think McCoy is certainly worth taking in the first round. I don't have a problem with the pick there. And I think if you want to run a more man-heavy defense and you wanted to go McCoy over Delane, I don't necessarily have an issue with it, but I do think Delane's a little bit more polished. However, McCoy's athletic intangibles are really, really strong. Really, really strong. Spencer Fano, he falls to 14. Listen, I think this is fine, right? In terms of offensive lineman rankings, I completely agree with Daniel Jeremiah here. Ioane, Muaga, and then Fano, no problem for me at 14. 15, the safety out of Toledo, Emmanuel McNeil Warren. So I'm going to be honest, I haven't done as much tape on McNeil Warren. This is the guy that's been rising up draft boards that I got to take a look at. A safety prospect out of Toledo. Obviously, a couple of years ago, the Eagles hit on Quinyon Mitchell out of Toledo, now a top 5 player at his position. McNeil Warren, tall, long safety prospect, kind of reminiscent of Nicky Manwari, who we just saw be a crucial part of the Seattle Seahawks defense, who are one of the best, if not the best defense in football. You know, Texans, Seahawks, argue with that what you want. I land on the Houston side, but it is what it is. Point being, we have seen that a strong, good, tall, lengthy safety, Kyle Hamilton, Manwari, can make a strong difference to a team. So I wouldn't be shocked if we see McNeil Warren continue to go up draft boards. Again, you're talking to a guy who values safety. So there's no problem here for me for that. Kenyon Sadiq up to 16. Sadiq the freak. Oh, man, my Oregon Ducks. So I love Sadiq, obviously. Not as tall as you'd want for your typical tight end. Do I think he's going to be this game-breaking tight end at the NFL level? No. But do I think he's going to be really, really consistent and, consistently year in and year out be viewed as a top 10 tight end in the league? I do. The speed and athleticism that this guy has are wide receiver esque. When Kyle Pitts came out, he was talked about as being able to run wide receiver type routes. Now, Kyle Pitts has the size and the build that really made him a top 5 draft pick. I don't think Sadiq has that, but I do think Sadiq has the ability to win routes one-on-one at the NFL level against safeties and really be able to dominate linebackers and cause a problem in terms of them not being able to keep up with him. Super explosive, has separation, decent hands. You want him to develop further, and whatever team brings him in, they are bringing in a prospect that isn't fully developed. You are going to have to get him better, but I think that the intangibles are worth a first round pick. Absolutely. Then we have Jordan Tyson. Tyson is really, really strong as a player. He is one of the tougher guys I've had to take a look at and say, would I take a chance on this guy? Because in terms of what you saw from him when he was playing, I think you could argue he was the best looking prospect out there. In terms of his movements, he is super fluid. And yes, he is Odell Beckham Jr.-esque in that manner. However, unfortunately, he's also Odell Beckham Jr.-esque in the injury department. The guy's already got an ACL injury, a clavicle injury. Now he's dealing with a hamstring injury. He's just been beat up. Is that something that's necessarily going to stick with him throughout his NFL career? I don't think so. I don't think that any of those injuries are fully connected. You could make a case that the ACL and hamstring injuries are connected. From what I understand, I don't think so. He's super explosive, a lot of wow plays, like mentioned. It's just the injuries really concern me. If he was, if I knew, if he had the injury history of Carnell Tate, I think he'd be my number 1 wide receiver on the board. But you are taking a bit of a risk with him. So I don't mind the ranking there. Denzel Boston. Boston's continuing to climb up some draft boards. I like Boston. Javon, who I do the podcast with, said that he thinks Boston's ceiling is one of T. Higgins. He's a big frame, solid ball skills. I think he's really solid there. Omar Cooper Jr. Cooper Jr. is a guy that I've been rising on. And I think probably by the time we get to the draft, he'll be my wide receiver 4 on the board over Denzel Boston. Strong, reliable, had a lot of success at Indiana with Mendoza. I know a lot of the credit goes there, but, Mendoza didn't do it all. That game-winning touchdown he had against Penn State was just freaking disgusting. I don't know how he got a toe down, but Omar Cooper definitely rising up draft boards. Akeem Mesidor falls to 20. I probably would have Mesidor a little higher. I think Mesidor, similar to David Bailey, but maybe more polished right now. If you're Kansas City or Baltimore or one of those teams that feels that, hey, we're going to contend next year, and we're talking about Super Bowl, and we need production immediately, I think Akeem Mesidor could be your guy. I think Mesidor could easily come in and have more than 10 plus sacks next year. Yeah, I think he's got size, athleticism. The right up here, I disagree with, a better version of Nick Scorton. I don't know. That feels a little loose to me. I think that Mesidor is solid. Cassius Howell out of A&M. This is where we start getting into a tier 2, tier 3 edge rushers. I think that there is a tier break, right? I think your top 4 of Bailey, Bain, Reese, and Mesidor are the top 4 that will go. I don't know the order, but I think that that's your 4 edge rushers first, and then we fall here to a Cassius Howell and a Folk. I like Howell. I think he's a solid player. They say a little small, but I think he'll be a decent NFL player. CJ Allen, linebacker out of Georgia. I think that this is another sleeper pick here for me. I like CJ Allen. He's intelligent in that Kirby Smart defense, a high-level player. I'm going to start being a little shorter here that we can get through these 50 guys in more of a timely manner. Dylan Thinaman, a safety that I think has good instincts athletically, not as Interesting as Downs or the kid out of Toledo, but I do think that Thieneman found a way to be in the right place at the right time. And I do think he does have a solid ability to match up with tight ends too, because he plays with some strength into his game. Blake Miller. Blake Miller is an interesting one, man, because out of Clemson, I mean, Clemson was supposed to have a lot of first round picks when we looked at this draft a year ago, but Blake Miller is a guy that kind of still hovered around being a first round talent. I think he's a tackle at the NFL. Some people will say he's a guard, but I don't mind Miller here. Monroe Freeling, again, this is where you get to the offensive line categories at the end of the draft where the better teams are picking these O linemen, and we'll see how they produce. I know I've heard some good things about Freeling as well. Colton Hood, the corner out of Tennessee, he started to fall down the board as we've seen McCoy go up. Hood has average size, but excellent play speed and toughness. In press, he is patient, staying on balance before using his hands to redirect at the line of scrimmage. I like Colton Hood. I think that he is the clear third corner in this draft, but I still think that he could find his way into the first round, potentially. Lee Hunter. Lee Hunter is a player I absolutely love, man. I think Lee Hunter, as a defensive tackle, his job at Texas Tech was to make things easier on David Bailey, and he did absolutely that. I think Lee Hunter, if you compare him at the NFL level with a high-end pass rusher, you're going to see the best out of that high-end pass rusher because of how much the opposing offense has to respect Lee Hunter. And I also think Hunter's really solid in the run game, man. You talk about converting on 3rd and long, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 7, whatever. That's where your pass rushers eat. Lee Hunter is the kind of player that makes sure those early runs don't get it to a 3rd and 4, that those pass rushers will have an opportunity. So I'm a big fan of Lee Hunter's game. Keldrick Folk, we kind of just talked about him here. I do prefer Cassius Howell to Folk, but I think that Folk is a solid player as well. I wouldn't be shocked if we saw him go in the first round. It's a pretty deep defensive line, first round of the NFL draft. So if you need help in that category, you should be feeling good. Caden Proctor, man, I liked what I was reading about the player, and then a little bit on the tape, kind of slow. So falling down the board again, I think Blake and Freeling over him are fine choices. Absolutely. Avion Terrell, the corner out of Clemson, a little small for my liking. Probably a nickel at the next level, but nickels are important as well. If your team needs a nickel, I think Terrell could be a solid piece for you. Absolutely. Caleb Lomu, offensive tackle out of Utah. Lined up at left tackle for the Utes, has an ideal frame with room to add more weight and strength. In pass protection, he has an average foot quickness and plays a little upright, yet he consistently stays square and does a nice job reworking his hands to avoid allowing defenders to pry open his shoulder. I think Lomu probably will be a solid piece for you, especially on a rookie contract, but I don't know if he's some Pro Bowl caliber player. TJ Parker, the edge out of Clemson. I've been seeing him climb up some boards, so I think maybe I got to do a little bit more research on him. An intriguing edge rusher with versatility to slide inside. He has had a monster 2024 campaign, 11 sacks, but saw his production drop off this past season to 5. The questions with these Clemson players is always going to be, because again, so many of these guys were projected first round picks, from Klubnik to Parker to Terrell to Miller, and it's just how much of Clemson's lack of success was because these players aren't the caliber player we thought they were, or something else. And now these Clemson players, you could be getting steals if you pick them in the later portions of the draft. Number 33, KC Concepcion. Concepcion's got nice speed to his game. I think we've seen in the past some of these NFL teams value speed more than they should, but I think rank 33 as a guy going in the early second round, maybe a late first round pick for a team like Denver who could use a wide receiver. I wouldn't hate, but I think that's a fair spot for him. 34, Max Ian Anchor. He's moving up. I'm gonna be honest, don't know too much about him, but this is why we go through these lists at this time of the year, man. In February, time to start researching some Anchor. Hey, I mean, it's Anchor, but Anchor for the offensive line could be something there. Caden McDonald, a name that I do know a decent amount about. I've seen some mock drafts of him going to the Texans. Some people say the Texans need some defensive tackles because they're just getting a little bit older. Caden McDonald, I think, is a really solid piece. I don't think he's going to be, again, we're at rank 35. We're not drafting likely all pros, but consistent, high quality NFL starters, I think Caden McDonald absolutely could be that. Caleb Banks out of Florida. I think this is a defensive tackle that we could easily see rise up in the draft. I've seen him get mocked as early, and I'm not kidding you, as 9 to Kansas City. He is a really strong defensive tackle with really good measurables in terms of size, athletic build, lengthy type player, and I think he can make an immediate impact. I think that's why you saw in that mock draft I was talking about Kansas City take him, because an immediate impact could be felt with Caleb Banks, no doubt about it. Injury history is concerning, but we'll see. Do people take the risk? Do you not take the risk? To be determined. Brendan Cease, the South Carolina cornerback, again, a fast, twitchy corner, outside guy. I think you could see him potentially move to the inside, but outside guy, solid piece. Peter Woods, again, similar to what I was talking about earlier with these Clemson guys. It feels like these are all guys that were projected to go earlier than they are going. Woods, thick, square defensive tackle prospect with fabulous quickness, violent hands. As a run defender, he can hold the point of attack when blockers are lined up over his nose. Probably more of a nose tackle at the NFL level, but solid piece there. R. Mason Thomas, Oklahoma edge rusher. Oklahoma's defensive line was nasty last year, so could be something worth taking a shot on. Ty Simpson, quarterback out of Alabama, falls to 40 on this list. Ty Simpson's going to be an interesting name because there are a decent amount of teams that can use a quarterback. And when you watch the Ty Simpson tape, man, there are games where he looks like he should be the #1 overall pick in the draft. And then there are games where he looks like maybe that's a round 2, round 3 guy. And it's just, do you want to be the team to take this guy and try to develop him? I think an interesting landing spot for him is the Los Angeles Rams. Do the Rams use that 13th overall pick to take a quarterback who they know isn't going to be playing this year, but you try and speed up that transition from Matthew Stafford to another quarterback? Obviously, we saw Kansas City do that once upon a time with Alex Smith to Patrick Mahomes. Now, am I saying that Ty Simpson is going to be Patrick Mahomes? I'm not. But I'm just saying it wouldn't be the first time we've seen a team who was winning a lot of football games all of a sudden get a higher up pick and be like, you know what, this is kind of our shot to take a QB prospect we like. Let's take him. Ty Simpson, certainly going to be an interesting name to watch on the draft. You could see the Jets or the Steelers potentially as well in on him to be the guy next year. Christian Miller, defensive tackle out of Georgia, solid piece. I wouldn't mind that. Anthony Hill Jr., linebacker out of Texas. I think that Hill Jr. is a sleeper piece. I think that this is, I'm going to be keeping an eye out for where Hill goes. Jadarian Prince, interesting running back prospect here. Obviously, he split carries in time with Jeremiah Love, but he is going as the #2 running back in this draft class. So just let it be clear. What Prince is a solid piece. I wouldn't be mad if my team drafted him by any means. Malachi Fields, Notre Dame wide receiver. Again, I think he's a decent player. I don't think he's a wide receiver 1, but could be a wide receiver 2, could be a wide receiver 3, depending on the offense. Keontae Scott, cornerback out of Miami, nickel player. I think the nickel position is growing in the NFL, so you may see a team take a reach on Scott that could use some help at that position. Antonio Williams, again, Clemson wide receiver, more of a slot guy, but solid piece overall. Zion Young, Missouri edge rusher, decent piece, absolutely. Jake Golday, Cincinnati linebacker. Don't know much about him. Another one of those names that I don't recognize fully. Didn't watch a ton of Cincinnati football this year, so I'm going to be honest with you guys. Got to do some research there. Dion Burks, undersized. Again, I think he's a decent player. I prefer Zacharias Branch out of Georgia, probably to Burks and even to Williams. I would take Branch over those guys. I think Branch has some really strong hands, and he caught some big passes at Georgia. So that is Daniel Jeremiah's updated top 50 prospects. Let me know what you think he got right. What do you think he got wrong? What do you think I got right? What do you think I got wrong? If you love the NFL and you're not yet subscribed to this YouTube channel, make sure you hit that button. I'll catch you next time. Peace.